Let's go over the connection between the Yerkes-Dodson law and the fire thong and how we used it in class and what I want you to cover in your video. First, let's look at some of the materials that we're using. A traditional fire thong would be using rattan on rattan, meaning that you would have a segment of rattan that would be pulled back and forth on a larger piece of rattan that had a funnel in it. So you have a smaller port at the bottom, and then dust is going to build inside that funnel and eventually catch on fire and create an ember. But we don't have rattan that grows in Texas. So I want to use native resources to show that this technique can be used. It may not be as easy, but at least it can be used. But that ties perfectly in to the Yerkes-Dodson model, because we need to talk about how task difficulty can affect somebody's arousal state for an activity. And when I say arousal, I mean motivation. So this connects to the prior lecture that we had in the previous class. First, let's look at the components. So we're going to use bamboo on cedar. That's a good combination. And if you're going to use bamboo, you're going to need some handles, because we're going to have to use smaller segments. And you want to use bamboo that has not been burned. It'll be too dry. You want fresh bamboo. You can even use green bamboo for this to work. So you're taking a lark's head and you're sliding it over that segment. So you want to go from segment to segment, and that area needs to be at least 4 or 5 inches long. It's okay if you're flexing this and the outer bands or fibers break. That's okay, as long as the inner bands aren't broken. And then we would pull this back and forth, and you'll see that in the student videos. Another alternative that we've been successful with in class is yucca. So yucca is a fireboard, and then taking cotton or yucca fibers that are reverse wrapped, and then you would pull that back and forth. The good thing about having cordage is you don't need sticks for a handle. So you could use these as a handle, and if you have a long enough piece of cordage, if it breaks, you could just tie a knot into it and then use another form of cordage that may be nylon that cannot be used on the fireboard because it'll melt, but cotton and yucca fibers, any natural fiber, can be used as long as it's flexible enough so that it won't break too quickly. But I want you to talk in terms of motivation to do this activity. The reason we're using the fire thong in combination with the Yerkes-Dodson law, or using it to analyze the Yerkes-Dodson law, is because it is a difficult activity. No matter how you do it, even best case scenario with rattan, it's difficult. It's one that you can't just muscle through. So it does take a certain level of skill. You're going to have to put forth a lot of physical effort to get it to start, but then you've got to dial back that physical effort and just keep a constant amount of smoke and heat to create an ember. So that's what I want you to talk about. Now, the Yerkes-Dodson law is a normal curve, and at the beginning of that curve is boredom. Were you bored for this activity? And how did that influence your motivation? Was the task difficulty so great for this activity that you became anxious and overwhelmed? That would be at the extreme end. What I want you to try to get to is that Goldilocks state, where you're interested enough in the activity and you're motivated enough to do it, but you're not overwhelmed. So I want you right in the middle of that normal curve for the Yerkes-Dodson law. That's how we're going to take this activity and use it to analyze how the Yerkes-Dodson law is used not only for physical activities, but how you can use it to not only design a course, but also learn in a course.